welcome back to another week of shows. I'm going to start off actually continuing from videos I did last week. This time I'm going to do a triple bill of Fukasaku movies. This is the director of The Battles Without Honor and Humanity, Battle Royale, New Battles for Honor and Humanity, that stuff. Here I'm looking at a couple of individual films that weren't part of a series, but are also quite excellent. You've got Street Mobster, there we go. We've got Cops and Thugs, Cops versus Thugs, and Doberman Cop. Right, so this is Street Mobster. Was this kind of first real crime film. This is when he kind of found his style. He'd been doing stuff before this, but this is when he really went from being a kind of journeyman director to being someone with a distinct take on things within a certain genre, which was the yakzua genre. This was has basically when everything started to come together for him, because this would lead to what he was going to do with Battles Without Honor. You know, this was he found his leading man. He found his approach, which is much more based on realism, much more based on research into what happens to these people and the Yakuza, and it is very downbeat because it takes a point of view of a street mobster played by Buntu Sagawata, who's his Sagawara, sorry, who was his leading man in the Battles Without Honor films, and who'd also turn up in Cops vs Thugs. But this is where they really kind of started to work together. And Street Mobster is one of the best gangster films I've seen. This is really good. This is on par with, you know, the Battles films. This is just really good. I'd place this well above any Scorsese film in the gangster genre. Just basically, it feels like this was like, I'm not sure Scorsese saw this film, but you're pretty sure he must have, because it seems so influenced by the approach, the rough and tumble approach that this film had. The way they dealt with brutality and they dealt with the levels of gangsterism. You can see a lot of what would become Goodfellas in this film. You know, this was made like 18 years before Goodfellas. This was like just very new. This was getting made right about the time they were making the Godfather films, which were much more stage films, and Fukasaku was making Street Mobster, because Street Mobster was a rebellion against what was the stage Yakuza genre from like the Outlaw Gangster VIP films and the Nikatsu films, which were romanticised, really. They could see how bad the Yakuza actually were, but they were still romanticised. There's still a kind of romantic yearning to some of the characters. There was still some dignity to certain characters. Even though those films were quite tough on how bad the Yakuza were, there still was that romanticism. And this one, that throws us out the window. The mobster in this lands in jail for something stupid, gets out of jail eventually, and gets back to business of running a street gang, messing people up, trying to take over territory, and just acting like a complete animal. Basically, he's like indefensible morally throughout this film, which is what's wonderful about the character. There is no way to defend him. This is what a street thug would be like. This is about the film. It's a film with the kind of character who would normally be a side character, who is the character that they all have to try and control because he's a bit crazy. This is from the point of view of that character, you know, and you see from his point of view of all these other people are scared and stayed, and they're not doing what they need done. So this guy will get into fights that are nonsensical. This guy will attack people just to prove he can, and he slowly comes under the wing of one gangster who's a very respectable guy now, who sees something of himself in this young gangster. He's trying to make him become more like a respectful guy, because he knows that this is the way to improve, this is the way to make money. Actually, it's to actually go beyond your kind of animalistic tendencies and actually become a member of society in some way and hide your criminal enterprises under the surface and have people between you and the crimes. But the Street Mobster character, he lives for the crimes, he's about the crimes, he loves being a criminal, he doesn't care about the money's nice but it comes and goes for him. It's just like, it's the buzz of doing the crime, it's a buzz of punching someone in the face. He is an animal, and no matter what anyone else tries to deal with him, that's what the takeaway is. This guy's an animal. There's no way he's going to live to an old age. He just has a mentality that is brutal. And he also has a weird girlfriend who in the first few scenes you see him gang raped by him and his gang. He runs into her later and this weird dark relationship starts between them that's not quite love but is kind of strangely loyal and strangely messed up. They're two messed up people who know how messed up the other person is, and he's kind of partially responsible for, well, he's completely responsible actually for some of her problems. I mean, as I said, partially responsible because he caused the initial problem, but she obviously went much further in her own weird way. So, you know, I mean, like, he started her roll towards hell, then she kept on going because there's obviously something in her personality that liked it and was attracted by it. Because two people who are going to hell and they will take as many people as they can with them. And it is just this thing of this guy who will not learn. He gets this mentor who comes in from an old gang, who's from another gang, who tries to help him manipulate and deal with the politics. And they start doing well and they start dealing with other gangs and start to make some money, but it gets messed up. And this guy walks away eventually. And it's one of those things, is having someone crazy in the gang means that anybody who's in the gang will die. There's no way. This film's got a massive body count. And it's pretty brutal idea. If you're a criminal, there is a good chance you're lucky if you end up in jail. There's a good chance that you'll end up dead in a horrible way, and you might be cut awkwardly and die bleeding and painfully, and it's not a good death. And it's all because of this crazy mobster character, and in the centre that no one has. He's a kind of powerful character because he's a lot of charm, he's a lot of drive, but he doesn't have a lot of intelligence. So this is a wonderful film. It's not stylized, very rough and ready, but the way it's cut, the way that the propulsion of the narrative, the atmosphere and the way the characters interact makes it feel very realistic. It was based loosely on a gangster who got out of the life in his early memoirs. But this is much more towards the idea of this guy never getting the life, and it's so brutal. It's just wonderful. And the person it was based on, his memoirs, would be used as for the Graveyard of Honor, which was another Fukasaku movie that came later, and I've just butchered the name. Fukasaku. I knew I'd butcher his name. So, Street Mobster is highly recommended. This is just stunning. I've tried not going into any detail of the gangster stuff because you need to see to believe it, because it is just insane. It earns its 18 certificate. This will never not be an 18 certificate film. There's no way around this one. Okay, now we go to Cops vs Thugs. This is a very different film. This is a film about how the police and the criminal enterprises have learned to get along. You know, again, it's based in fact, it's been researched, it's from the team who did the Battle for Honor and Humanity. Same actor in the lead, same director, same writer, the team there. And it is based about what does it take for a cop to actually have to deal with gangsters, and knowing that they can be violent, but also knowing you can have to keep them in line. You have to be aware that some people are going to be criminals, so you have to just try and work within a set of guidelines and keep the peace, basically. So this is a film about those scenes we always get in those movies where the police just try to keep the peace between the gangs, and you always wonder what it's on about. And that's the film where it explains that this is how it happens. Because a lot in this system, a lot of the cops and gangsters grew up post-war Japan where everyone was starving. Some became gangsters, some became cops, but they all had that survival technique. And they all had sort of sympathies for the other side of like, this is a horrible situation and there's a lot less judgment than you expect. So Bunto is the cop and he's very morally compromised. He's getting a divorce. He's not getting on with his wife. He does not want a divorce. But he doesn't have any real drive in it either. He's a decent enough guy, but he does things his own way, which means he likes hanging out with gangsters. Means he's a bond with one of the other gangsters who is running a crime syndicate for his boss who's in jail, so he's trying to keep it running until the boss gets out of jail. And him and the cop have a good relationship. They understand each other, and the cop helped him out once when he could have been fingered for murder. So the cop understands, like, he could have put this guy away but instead he never. And they've got a bond because of that. And they have sympathies for each other's position. And they're trying to make the best of a bad situation. Now a new crime family is now trying to come into the area, or to dominate the area, and they've got a lot of corporate ties. So, and they're manipulating one of the gangs who are the two main gangs in the city, and they're backing them to get what they want. And the cop decides to help the other side. One, because he does not like the side that is trying to take over. He does not like the mentality of just being these kind of, you know, like corporate guys. He does not like that. He likes the much more tactile, hand-to-hand, let's go for a drink mentality. And he also does not like the other gang. The other gang annoys him. But he has to deal with them most of the time. But since I've joined up with these corporate guys, it makes me hate them a lot more. Unfortunately, because of the thing spills out of control, a guy's brought in to run the investigation, who suspects a lot of the police are tied to the mob, and who is going out to hunt down police and the mobsters, which means Bunto is now under suspicion. And he has to tread really carefully. So this is a wonderful film. Again, this is on par with the Battles Without Honour series. This is so good. It is a bit of the ambiguity of cops and criminals, and how they come from the same place, and people make different choices, but there's a kind of grey area where people, as long as the criminals don't go too far, the cops will not come all out against them. And they can go for drinks with each other sometimes. As long as they don't go too far, as long as they keep in their lane, it's fine. As long as society is allowed to keep going as it is, it's fine. That's what you want to do, fine. People you deal with want to do that, it's fine. Just don't go too far. And then when the corporate ideology comes in, the corporate greed of trying to buy up land and throw out the old Yakuza ways and things, that's when it becomes a problem, and you realise the corporate world has interrupted both the police and the gangsterism, and it's not going to be the same. So if you're from that old world, you're dead. There's no way you're going to escape. And it becomes a tragedy of these guys try to resist the changing of the ways, and everything they do comes back to haunting them in horrible ways. And no matter how the lead cop reacts, he's not getting out of this situation alive. You know, it's kind of a tragedy of a guy trapped within his own mindset when the world has moved on a little bit. So it's a wonderful film. It's very moving, despite the fact you're dealing with gangsters and cops and things. Normally that would not be moving, but this one is, and it's just a wonderful film. I highly recommend it. It's top class Yakuza film making. The final film in the series of films I'm talking about today is Doberman Cop. This is the weakest of the film by a mile. This was when the industry was changing, and the director at this point was about to move on to start making other kind of films that weren't this kind of thing. That he kind of had enough of the gangster films, and he was kind of moving on to other kind of films. I think he kind of burnt himself out in a gangster type of film. The audience was moving on, he was moving on. I think everyone was kind of like, okay, we've done this. That's as much as we can do with this type of movie. We've kind of covered every possible permutation of this while keeping it within, like, doing films based on research. So Doberman Cop is based on a comic book, and apparently they weren't big fans of the comic book, and so Sonny Chiba was brought in. So the character of the comic book was changed completely to being just a cop, to being a crazy cop, to be a cop who came from the outside and who brought a pig with him. So it's basically Coogan's Bluff. And they have some interesting things. Sonny Chiba's always good fun in the lead because he's got some charm. Him interacting with people who always originally think he's a big dummy and realising he's not, he's pretty smart. It's quite cool. The actual plot is quite interesting, where it's about a murder of a prostitute, and then it becomes a case of looking for this other person who may have disappeared, who maybe the victim might not be. No one's quite sure. And there's this singer who's got a mysterious past. So it's all about fakery within the industry and trying to get ahead, trying to escape from your past and trying to escape from the traumas of your past, and how you're actually addicted to the image of where you could be, rather than trying to take what you've got and working with it. And what the cost of that, what's the cost of hating your past rather than embracing it and trying to work from it. That's kind of the drive of the film. And that's interesting, but the film was only half-hearted. I don't think that the heart was in this one. I think this was like a film made between, like, doing one set of films and moving on to another type of filmmaking. And it just feels like very half-hearted. It's kind of a Coogan's Bluff idea of a guy coming in from the outside and causing a lot of havoc. But even that's only half done. It's still like there's a psycho killer going round, and it's so obvious that it's a cop who's a killer. And that plot is just a waste of time. It's just a complete waste of time. It slows everything down and it moves you away from the main thrust of the story, which is this woman's mysterious past. And it adds running time you don't really need in the film. So there's that kind of thing, but there's also just a feeling of the filmmakers aren't really interested in the resolution. They're interested in the setup, but they haven't figured out a resolution that's satisfying, and it just kind of ends in a kind of very vague way. And it's just like, it's by far the worst film I've seen by this director. You know, not that it's bad, it's just kind of half-hearted. It's just like, he doesn't really want to be there. And you can tell when a director doesn't want to be there. It's just one of those things. Just watch the film, you can tell. So, enjoyable film, but not a great film. It's just a Sonny Chiba vehicle, basically. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Watch Street Mobster and Cops vs Thugs immediately if you can. The Run Arrow video, they're amazing. Doberman Cop, you can take or leave it. There's enough interesting stuff there to be worth a watch, but make sure to buy it at a sale. Don't spend a lot of money on it, because it's not really worth spending a lot of money on. It's just not that good quality. So I'll be back soon with another video. I hope you enjoyed this one. I'll see you soon.